Desde que te conocí cobró sentido. La cruz luchó por mí aunque la había herido. En el pasado viví distraído. Quiero volver a ti, mi fiel amigo. Y desde que te conocí cobró sentido. La cruz luchó por mí aunque la había herido. En el pasado viví distraído. Quiero volver a ti, mi fiel amigo. Por mí te entregaste y hoy soy feliz. Ya no me atormenta lo peor de mí. Me buscas y me enseñas a vivir. Puedo todo porque te tengo a ti. Y si tú quieres llevarme, yo sé que tu plan es amarme. Diste todo para rescatarme, por eso no estoy solo. Me hiciste tu tesoro, por eso para siempre yo te adoro. Y si tú quieres llevarme, yo sé que tu plan es amarme. Diste todo para rescatarme, por eso no estoy solo. Me hiciste tu tesoro, por eso para siempre yo te adoro. Sé que estoy aquí porque tú sí lo has querido. Mantuviste ese corazón medio vivo, porque en tu propósito aún estaba yo.
Atraviesa el tráfico de autos con el mejor playlist.
The drive home sounds better.
Que el camino suena mejor con la Celestial 106.5. Atraviesa el tráfico de autos con el mejor playlist.
The drive home sounds better.
Que el camino suena mejor con la Celestial 106.5.
No le cambie, porque a continuación comenzará un programa que bendecirá tu vida. Aquí en la Celestial FM 106.5. El siguiente programa es clasificación A, apto para todo público. Contenido E, entretenimiento.
Toda palabra o punto doctrinal emitido en el siguiente programa es responsabilidad exclusiva del programador y no de esta radioestación.
Bienvenidos a Café con Hispanos, un programa que conecta nuestra fe, nuestros valores como familia, nuestros negocios y proyectos de ley que afectan a nuestra comunidad hispana aquí en Carolina del Norte. Entrevistamos al gobierno y a líderes de nuestra comunidad para dialogar sobre el trabajo que realizan en beneficio nuestro, actualidad y un sabor a dulce hogar. Somos la voz de nuestra gente hispana. Le damos la bienvenida al pastor Gilbert Pagan. Café con Hispanos comienza.
Se quedó conmigo en el fracaso, en mi oscuridad y mis momentos bajos. Y a pesar de conocerme tal cual soy, se quedó conmigo y sin reproche. Él me acompañó cuando perdí mi norte. Y a pesar de conocerme tal cual soy se quedó y sigue aquí porque dijo que estaría conmigo hasta el final, porque prometió la obra terminar. Él sigue aquí. No me dejará cuando en mi fe se meta el sol, cuando tropiece y piense que no hay solución. Él me guiará con la paciencia de su amor. Él sigue aquí.
Muy buenas tardes, bella audiencia. Un honor estar con ustedes otra vez, hispano del Sur y también locutor de Café con Hispanos. Me alegro que pueda estar con nosotros en esta tarde. Quería compartir una breve información sobre los hispanos en Carolina del Norte. Lo voy a hacer en inglés para compartirlo con el pueblo que habla inglés y no habla español. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for listening to Coffee with Hispanics. I'm Gil Pagan, Director of Hispanos del Sur, and also radio show host for Coffee with Hispanics. We'll be doing this show in particular in English. Thank you for joining us today and listening to some information regarding the Hispanic population in North Carolina. Just to give you a little background about our organization and what we have been doing and what we started here in North Carolina in particular. In the summer of 2020, we launched Hispano del Sur in the summer. So technically, we've been doing stuff since 2020. So it's about 4 years now that we've been operational. In the first 6 months of 2020, when we started from like summer, June, July into December, we were trying to get a grip on what we were doing, but also the needs of the Hispanic community and also churches in the state. You may recall that during COVID in March of 2020, everything got shut down, and churches in particular were not exempt, and there was a focus, particularly in North Carolina and other states too, but I'm going to focus our conversation here on preventing people from congregating and getting together. And even though other places were open, meaning like the Walmarts were open, Target were open, a lot of small businesses were required to close, restaurants were required to close, and Planned Parenthood was open, ABC liquor stores were open. So a lot of places were open when churches were forced to close. And we realized during that 6 month of 2020, from the middle of like June to December, that no one was advocating for opening churches up, particularly on the Hispanic side. There were no Hispanic organizations that were advocating for the churches to open, and that kind of was a catalyst for us to start, kind of motivated the organization to launch and to get the churches to reopen. And if you may recall that they were allowed to reopen a few months later after us and a whole bunch of other people and that were advocating for churches to reopen. We were able to get into churches, but they had that 25 limit rule, and everybody had to be social distance and all those kind of things. But that was kind of the launching pad catalyst for us with Hispano del Sur and kind of why we started it as a result of COVID. But that during a time of uncertainty in our country, we didn't know what was going on with this thing, with the illness, and the only place where people could go to cry out and to pray and to at least to get some kind of peace and comfort was the church, and the church was closed. So being an organization that is faith-based, and we have a certain focus on values and the like, that that was important to us, and obviously launched us to start. So that said, we started the organization formally in 2021, meaning structure-wise, but informally in the summer of 2020. kind of like the background. Right now, Hispano del Sur is in 15 counties across North Carolina, and we're in all the big ones, and also a lot of small ones. And we are in Wake County, Durham, Alamance, Johnston, Harnett, Chatham, Cumberland, Wayne, Warren, Mecklenburg, Cabarrus, Pitt, Forsyth, Pasquotank, and I think that's kind of basically where we are. I may have missed one or two. I think that maybe in actually 16 or 17 counties. Hispanics are the fastest growing population in the state, minority population that is, and also the fastest growing minority population in the country. So North Carolina is no exception to that rule, that the Hispanics are the fastest growing population in this state in particular. And Hispanics in general have conservative values, and Latinos have conservative values. Spanish people have conservative values, and certain people on the political spectrum, liberals, would try to have you believe that we support abortion, and that's not true. We are pro-life, far more so than pro-abortion. Liberals will have you believe that we support gay marriage. Not true. We support traditional marriage. Now, doesn't mean that we're going to criticize somebody else who's for gay marriage and who's marrying the same-sex person, but as a culture, generally speaking, we don't support that. We believe that marriage should be between one man and one woman, that who come together and they birth, right, the traditional familia. Comprende? Right? That's like natural stuff, right? Natural biology. The libs will have you believe that we support 64 genders. Definitely not true. There are only two genders, right? Male and female. That's basically it. There is no 64. And it's interesting because in the U.S., this kind of movement with all this gender ideology, I'm not going to go down that road right now, at length, but just to share something. When it comes to Hispanics in the U.S., obviously we don't support that, and the vast majority don't. It's only two genders, male and female. But overseas, when you go to other countries, like you go to Mexico, Mexico is a little bit of an exception, but because of its proximity to the U.S., it's going to be a little bit more liberal when it comes to certain things like that because of the influence of the U.S. into Mexico. Puerto Rico is the same, very similar. More tolerance, if you will, or acceptance of 40 genders or what have you, different kind of perspective. But Central and South America, when you go to let's say El Salvador, Guatemala, you go to Honduras, you go to Nicaragua, you go to a lot of these other countries that are more Latin, Hispanic, Spanish-speaking countries, you don't see some of the things we see here in the U.S. when it comes to different types of gender ideologies. It's not present over there. Although sure, you have people that may be trans and things like that. You have that over there, but they are extremely rare and extremely small in number, almost non-existent. So this is more of a U.S. thing. I'm not going to go into other countries like the U.K. and Europe, and I'm not going that way. But just generally speaking, it's not common over there in our country. And the further you get away from the U.S., meaning Hispanic countries, the less likely you're to see it. You will see this kind of stuff in Mexico, close proximity, Puerto Rico. It's Commonwealth, right? You'll see Canada, obviously, but Canada is English speaking. You'll see that over there. But just that's an interesting observation, just so that you can understand that the libs will have you believe that we support transgenderism. Not true. We believe you're born with the anatomy that God has given you, and that cannot be changed. The libs will have you believe that we support defund the police. Not true. We support law enforcement and want our neighborhoods, where we live, where we want to raise our kids, where our kids play in the street. We want those places safe from drugs, crime, and MS-13 gang members, right? But that I don't know where these ideas come from, where certain groups of people believe that we think a certain way or we believe in certain things, and that's not true. The libs will have you believe that we support gun confiscation. Not true. Many of us come from countries with authoritarian governments, dictatorships, and socialist regimes that where the first thing that these governments do when beginning to seize power is to disarm you, right? That's not what we have here in the United States, and clearly Hispanics as a group don't support that. They may not necessarily own firearms and the like, but they don't support that you take them away from everybody because in their countries, the ones who are in power and dictatorships, they take them away from them, which gives them, makes them weaker and they can't fight back. Hispanics support free speech, as we often are limited in what we can say, right? In our countries, not in America. I mean, you can say what you want to say, obviously, within certain limits. You can't call fire in a movie theater, right? But you can say what you want to say in America and be protected by the U.S. Constitution. But in other countries, so in other countries, you can end up speaking against a political party and be arrested. You could be, and on extreme measures, killed. You could be your family could be affected. You could be jailed, and look what happens in Venezuela, where they take opposition leaders off of the ballot, and then those who are protesting on the street because of the election are arrested. So there are things that you can do here in the U.S. and the free speech component that many Hispanics appreciate because they come from countries that you cannot speak against the political powers. You cannot evangelize in the streets. You cannot do tent meetings out there and try to convert people to Christianity or preach the gospel. That you are limited in certain countries. They want to control the free expression of religion. And clearly Hispanics who come from those countries come here. I don't support anybody restricting our ability to speak, restricting our ability to worship. Who we want to worship, what we want to worship, where we want to worship, when we want to worship, or if they don't want to worship, they don't have to worship, right? It's called freedom. So the libs will have you believe that that Hispanics are okay with limiting certain conversations and behaviors and the like, and that's not accurate. The libs will have you believe that that we support free stuff, like that whole socialist stuff and ideology and that's not accurate because we are some of the hardest working people in this country, and we come here to work. That's why we have a lot of people coming here for economic reasons, right? Into the U.S. Not only Hispanics, I mean, people coming from other countries as well because their economic systems in the overseas are bad where they live and the like. But they'll come here because they want to work. And Hispanics are not used to or accustomed to getting free stuff because overseas there is no social safety net. Overseas there is no Medicaid, there is no AFDC, there is no WIC, there's no welfare. There's nothing like that overseas. So when in these Spanish countries, in those Spanish countries, if you don't work, you don't eat. I mean, it's as simple as that. So when they come here, obviously we come here to work. We come here to provide for families, our families and the like, and we come to make an impact on the economy and the like. So that whole concept that we want free stuff or stuff like that, that's not necessarily accurate. Now, granted, there's some people who may go through some economic hardships when they're here, and under certain rare conditions, they may need some kind of support from local social services or government or not-for-profits and churches. That's an exception, not the rule. Okay, we again, in our countries, these programs do not exist, right? So we're not taught that. We're not carrying that. We're not seeded with that. We're not indoctrinated with that. That government gives us stuff. In our countries, government is inept. Well, it's like it is over here as well too, but it's inept over there. They can barely keep functioning themselves, and it's corruption and all those kind of things. So, the libs will have you believe that we want free stuff. It's not accurate. And we as a whole, as a group, Hispanics in general, we flee from countries that limit free speech, that take away, our firearms, that throw you in jail if you protest against the ruling party, and also if you dare to share the gospel in the streets, to try to get people to come to church or accept Jesus Christ. I mean, our values as a group are conservative. We are conservatives as a group. challenge is sometimes they don't necessarily know that, right? We don't necessarily know that if you're not from an American system, because in our countries, we have our values and we know what we believe in, but we don't connect those values necessarily to party. It is our belief system, it's who we are, it's what we carry, but we don't necessarily make those connections, and it's more of we have to instruct others to make those connections to a particular, let's say, party. So there's also confusion that the Hispanics will hear democracy, right, and associate that with a particular political party, let's say Democrats, which is not exactly the same thing. Okay, so democracy doesn't necessarily mean Democrats. Okay, conservatives, as a general rule, have dropped the ball on sharing what our system is and our value systems are, and how that connects to our Constitution and how that connects to our freedoms and our liberties and all that kind of stuff. We need to do a better job in sharing those points with our people. So I want to share some data with you on Hispanics in North Carolina, and just give you some rough numbers so that you can kind of digest that. In North Carolina, as a whole, everybody, there's about a little bit over 10,300,000 or so people. So let's say it's 10,400,000 just to round out some numbers. Of that 10,400,000, give or take, there's about a 1,100,000 in that number of Hispanics. So if you do just a round number, we represent about 10% of the population in the state. Okay. Now, that said, of that 10%, about, it's estimated, we estimate about 400,000 of the 1,100,000 and change are eligible voters. Okay. So that could be anywhere from 25 to 30%. Now, that kind of information and data is pulled from the Board of Elections, right? But it's pulled from, I guess, files where the person checks off that they are Hispanic. They check off their ethnicity, right? Race, ethnicity. There's a lot of people that have Spanish surnames that they don't check that off. They don't have anything listed, and those people could be, Hispanic, if they have a Hispanic surname, or they could be American if it's a female married to a Hispanic. With a obviously Hispanic last name, and she took his name, the last name. So, but generally speaking, we're estimating about 400,000, in that range, are eligible voters. So, 1.1 million Hispanics, right, give or take, there in that number. About 400,000 eligible, voters, give or take. You have about 400,000 who are in the state. Another 400,000 that are illegal, undocumented in the state. So of that, then their balance of the numbers, 350-ish, give or take, that in that ballpark have some kind of other status. And the other status is that they're here on a student visa, visitor's visa, work visa, agricultural worker, they're a green card holder. They have some other status, okay, in the U.S. and in North Carolina in particular. So 10,300,000 or so in the whole state, a little bit over 1,100,000, give or take, of Hispanics, about 10% of the population, about 400,000 rounded can vote, another 400,000 undocumented, illegal, and then the balance are people with other kind of statuses that they are here legally with some kind of visa or a green card on their, but they can't vote or anything like that, right? So that's kind of like the big picture, right, of that. Most of the Hispanics in North Carolina, by country of origin, in the following order, are Mexican, right? Vast majority are Mexican. Number one Hispanic population in the U.S. is Mexican, right? They're, because of the whole Texas, Mexico, California, and all that kind of thing. So they are the oldest population in the country, meaning they have the most people across the whole U.S. So North Carolina is no different. So Mexicans are number one. Number two is Honduras, right? Interestingly enough. And number 3 is El Salvador. And if you know a little bit about geography, they're kind of in the same part of the world, right? They're kind of in that part of the world, the kind of border countries, depending upon where you look at it on the map. So Mexico and North Carolina, most Hispanics in North Carolina, Mexican. Second is Honduras. Third is El Salvador. And number 4 is Puerto Rico. And number 5 is Cuba. And then after that, those top 5, you got a whole bunch of other, right? You got Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, Guatemala, all those other countries kind of falling in underneath those top 5. And listen, newsflash, we ain't all Mexican, all right? I know a lot of y'all people think, every single Spanish person you see driving around or walking around that has kind of dark skin is Mexican. We ain't all Mexican, okay? So you can see by the hat that I'm wearing, skin color, right? Cuban, right? So we're not all the same, right? We're not a monolithic group. We have different cultures, different food, different views on a lot of things. But conservative, we're conservative across all cultures, right? But from a food perspective, culture perspective, music perspective, even appearance perspective, we are all different. But our values are generally the same. Okay, we may differ on a few things here and there, more moderate, some of them maybe more moderate, certain things more socially conservative on others, but we're generally the same. Mexicans and Puerto Ricans can be, depending upon how long they've been here, but and how much influence the U.S. had on them before they came to the U.S. They could be more moderate because of the influences I talked about earlier in the program. That Mexico has been influenced a lot by the U.S. And obviously Puerto Rico is a Commonwealth, so it's that air bridge to the U.S. and the like. So there could have been a lot of influences there in a negative way, quite frankly. Because like I told you before, the further you get away from the U.S., the more conservative you get. All right, and you probably never looked at it that way, but that's kind of like the way it is. We've done surveys across 15 counties, 2,000 surveys across 15 counties, and 97% of the people that we engage with in the survey, this is a face-to-face survey, by the way, right? We go actually in the field at a place where Hispanics are congregating, whether that's food, shows, community centers, games, supermarkets, that kind of thing. And we ask them certain questions, and 97% agree with our conservative value proposition, right? Traditional marriage, pro-life, things like 2 genders, all that kind of stuff, free speech, freedom of religion, Second Amendment, those kind of things. They 97% agree with that. But when we ask them what's important to you from like every day when you wake up and you go to work, every day when you wake up and bring your kids to school, right? What are the things that are concerning you the most when you are taking, when you're going to work and you're taking your kids to school, and the 7 things that come up in matter of priority. And again, they change a little bit by county, but this is kind of like where everything lands for the most part. Number 1 issue that they're concerned about is work and the economy. So Hispanics, remember, we don't like free stuff. We don't have those social safety nets in our country. We come here to work, right? So the first thing that they're concerned about is work and have a job. I want to have a good economy. I want to provide for my family. Number 2 is healthcare. That they need healthcare, right? So that they can do what? Work and provide for their family, right? So they want to be able to, because many of the times the job that they may have, if they don't show up to work, they don't get paid, right? So they're working either labor jobs, hourly jobs. Again, general statement. There's other people that are in professional services, white collar, higher educated. I get that, but generally speaking, right, that they need healthcare. So 1 is work and economy. 2 is healthcare. Number 3 is education. They're concerned about they want their kids to get a good education, right, through the school system here in North Carolina. That's the 3rd issue. Number 4 is crime and drugs. They're concerned about that, where they live, right? They want to make sure there's low crime and there's no drugs that are being sold there, because they'll get to their kids eventually and the like. So that's number 4. Number 5 is immigration. Immigration is a concern. It falls into the 5, 6, and 7. It kind of goes up and down, but immigration is a concern. And that's related to ICE and police and things of that nature. And I'm going to get to that in a second. Sometimes it falls down to the 7th position. Number 6 is inflation and gas, right? The inflation and gas and the cost of stuff that has moved up into the fourth position. I'm averaging across the whole state, but that's moved up in the fourth position recently. Third position at times because of everything's so doggone expensive, right? And number seven is affordable housing because the rents are so expensive and people can't buy houses. They're paying basically a mortgage payment for renting a trailer or renting a 1-2 bedroom apartment. Going back to the immigration issue, many people think that Hispanics are concerned about ICE and concerned about immigration and police as a priority number one issue. In our overall surveys across the state, it falls into the fifth position, and most of the time it falls into the last position when we go into areas and we question them a little bit more. Let me tell you why. The responses that we asked when we asked them why aren't you concerned about immigration and ICE is because they say I'm working. I'm not doing anything, meaning these are people that are answering the question. I'm not doing anything where I would be interacting with the police. I'm going to work and I'm working 12-hour days. I go out in the morning at 7 o'clock. I come home at 7 o'clock at night. I work from 8 to 6 or what have you. I'm going to work. I'm not doing anything to have me interacting with law enforcement. So they're not overly concerned about interacting with the police, which is where immigration would come in, and if something were to happen, or some kind of negative interaction with the law enforcement because of something that person did. So they're not concerned about this as much, okay? And there's a misconception that they are. So remember, we're working, we're providing for our families, right? We're not looking to interact with the law enforcement. If anything, we want them to take the drugs out of our neighborhoods, take the crime out of our neighborhood, take the gang members out of our neighborhood, take these firearms out of our neighborhoods, right? So it's interesting that people have this misconception that it's one of the top issues, and it really isn't, okay? So that said, that it just take that with you, that it's not necessarily the way people are really thinking. So let's go share with you a little bit, what is the fastest growing population in North Carolina when it comes to Hispanics by age? It's 18 to 25. That is the fastest growing population as a percentage by age in North Carolina. Many of the children are hitting that 18 to 25-year-old range because their parents came first, right? Their parents are first-generation immigrants. These kids are children, right? These are children that the vast majority were born here. So these are citizens, right? And so they are second generation. And now they are the fastest growing population in North Carolina. 18 to 25 are second generation. Most of these kids are bilingual, right? Because they're being educated in a public school system for the most part. So they are second generation, parents are first generation. And North Carolina as a whole is a first generation state. Okay, we are not like Florida. Florida is on their second and third generation. We're not like California and Texas. They're on their second and third generation of kids. They're not. North Carolina is a first generation state, meaning the immigrants that are coming here, they're coming here, their parents, they're coming and having kids, or they brought their kids with them, right? And but they're first generation for the most part. We are easily probably a decade away, maybe even two, between another decade or two between the third and fourth generation. The second generation is just starting to come up. They'll get married, right? They'll have kids, right? And and the third generation and keep going. So, but we are still in the baby stages of the growth of the Hispanic population in North Carolina. So the places with the most Hispanics in sheer numbers, I'm talking about thousands, right? 40, I'd say 100,000, 65,000, in sheer numbers, in thousands, are the major cities, right? The major counties. Wake County, that whole area, Mecklenburg County, that whole area, and the Triad, right? So the main major cities have the most percentage, like just sheer people, right? Of the 1.1 million that I shared earlier in the broadcast of here, the vast majority are in those major areas, because that's just where most of the people are in general, right? As far as the urban areas, but they're again, sheer numbers, right? But there are many cities in North Carolina that have more density of Hispanics, higher density, smaller population, but higher density. I'll give you an example. Siler City. Siler City is in Chatham County. Siler City is a small community, right? A couple thousand, I think it's 5, 6, 7,000, something like that. 4, 5,000, or 56%. 56% of the people in Siler City are Hispanic. So again, small. As far as in comparison to Wake County has over 100,000 Hispanics, something like that. So that said, 5,000, 6,000 people in Siler, 56% of them are Hispanic. That means that every other person you see in Walmart is Jose or Maria. You're walking through Walmart, you're going to see Jose, you're going to see Rufus, you're going to see Maria, you're going to see Michael. Every other person is going to be a Hispanic person in Siler. So we're actually doing some work in Siler, by the way. So Siler is 56% Hispanic. Another area is Monroe. Monroe, in Monroe, North Carolina, has 28% of the population is Hispanic. It's more than 25%, right? So every fourth person is going to be Hispanic, right? Asheboro, 28%. Monroe, 28%. Siler City, 56%. Asheboro, 28%, right? Selma, 25%. That's in Johnston County, right? Sanford, Lee County, 19%. Smithfield, Johnson County, 18%, right? So these are areas that have less Hispanics in sheer number, but the density is higher as a percentage of the population. Burlington, about 17.5%, right? So again, the sheer numbers of Hispanics are in the big cities, right? But then you have the smaller cities that have a higher density. Now, I think the reason for that is that it's extremely expensive to live in the major urban areas right now. Charlotte's expensive. Mecklenburg, Wake County's expensive. And the Triad, Forsyth, it's all expensive to live there. So what's happening is that Hispanics live in areas that surround the major cities, right? Because the cost of living is cheaper. Although some of those areas are also increasing, so they can live there and can pay the rent or mortgage if they have a home, and they'll drive into the actual city to work. Not uncommon to hear that Hispanics will drive 45 minutes, sometimes an hour to get to work because they're living somewhere where they can afford to live, and then they're driving, spending money on gas, right, and car maintenance and things like that. But it's still better for them to do that. That's why you see a lot of these growth in the other areas, because they can afford it. Again, because if they're first generation immigrants, stick with me, right? They're going to tend to be working a lot of manual labor jobs. They're basically coming with unskilled labor, not education, not enough education, all that kind of thing. So they're working hourly jobs, construction, manual labor, stuff that we need, right? So they are living on the outskirts of the major cities and driving in, right, to work and provide for their families. So that's give you a sense of where they are, right? And some of the fastest growing areas, in North Carolina are actually on the coast with the Hispanics, and they're actually fast growing in that area, which is very very interesting. Some data that I had looked at showed that the fastest growth of Hispanics was in Brunswick County, right? And then followed by Currituck, Pender, Franklin, and Lincoln. And these are, not all of them are on the coast, but the Brunswick covers the coast, Pender covers the coast, and these are areas where a lot of Hispanics are also going to. What's interesting is that those areas, when you look at what's going on, apart from the Hispanics growing fast, very fast over there, those areas are places where many of the people from out of state are coming into, and they're going there to retire. Some of them are going there to live and work, but the vast majority are going there to retire on the beach town, the coast. And what is that creating? That's creating jobs. That's creating the need to build houses. That's creating the need to cut grass. Creating the need to have people working in hotels, working in restaurants. cleaning houses. I mean, all these kind of things that come with a growth of a particular area is what's making some of those Hispanics be there, because that's where the work is, right? So that's growing fast in those areas because of the influx in migration, right? They're coming in from out of state, other states coming to our state, coastal areas, and that's bringing jobs, and we're the workers, right? So we're moving there to work and live and the like. So and it's very interesting because the staff that are the Hispanic that are in those areas are not cheap to live in either. So they'll tend to live in a contiguous town, maybe half mile, 30 minutes away, as well. Very similar to the example I gave you here of the Wake and the Charlottes and the Forsyth. They're living on the outskirts of the cities and then commuting into work. Very similar situation in these areas that are fast growing, right? So Brunswick, Currituck, Pender, Franklin, Lincoln, those are fast areas that are growing in North Carolina. And also, listen, the Wake counties and the Durhams and the Cumberlands and Onslow as well is on the coast. Those areas are all growing too. I mean, they're growing because they're the major urban areas. But from a percentage perspective, the coastal lines are growing fast because of all the in-migration from other states to come here. That said, Hispanics have the highest labor participation rate in North Carolina. 67% of Hispanics in North Carolina are working. We are in the workforce. 67% of the 1.1 million are in the workforce, right? And that's everybody, right? Remember, that's illegal, the people who got status here, people that are on visas, or if they have work visas, green card, that's everybody, right? So 1.1 million people of that, 67% are in the workforce. Now, in comparison to my white brothers and my black brothers, 63%. 63% of the whites are in the workforce. Hispanics are 67. 63% of the blacks are in the workforce. Hispanics are 67. Again, goes back to our work ethic, right? Not saying that you guys, the other whites and blacks are not working, but our percentage is much higher, right? Because we come here to work, right? And the other people who may fall into the other races, who may have status here, right? They may be, for some other reason, lower in the workforce, retired, could be sick, not in the workforce for various reasons, where the Hispanics have a higher workforce participation rate because of the work ethic, and also many are immigrants sending money back probably overseas to their families and all that. So there's a lot of variables to that, right? So 63% whites are in the workforce, 63% blacks are in the workforce, 67% Hispanics are in the workforce. So we have a higher participation rate. So everybody wants to hire Hispanics because we work, we show up, we work, right? I mean, that's, that house that you're probably living in right now, maybe you're watching this broadcast or driving home as you're listening to it on the radio or on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the broadcast, that house more than likely was framed by Pablo, right? Because we're in the construction industry. 31% of the Hispanics in North Carolina work in the construction industry. 31%, right? So Pablo more than likely framed your house, right? Sure, maybe Michael was the head contractor, but Pablo was the subcontractor, and him and his crew did the framing. Listen, have you ever gone to a construction site? What do you see at the construction site? Hispanics, right? That's what you see. 26% of Hispanics are in agriculture. That means that strawberry that you ate, which, by the way, we have a large strawberry agriculture here, farms here. That sweet potato that you're eating, right? Those carrots that you're eating, everything that was picked here was probably picked by Juana. Juana picked those sweet potatoes for you, or strawberries for you, right? And if you're a smoker, she may have picked the tobacco as well, right? So 26% of the workforce in North Carolina are in the ag industry. 23% of the Hispanic workforce in North Carolina are in leisure and hospitality. So when you came in and you flew into RDU to attend a meeting at a hotel, Maria was the one that probably cleaned your room. Okay, so we're in, and by the way, when you go to eat at that restaurant, that food tastes really good. It's an Italian restaurant. The guy back in the back cooking it, his name is Jose. It's not Eduardo. It's not Mario. No, it's Jose. He's cooking in the back in that restaurant, right? Making that food for you. And the 20% of the Hispanics are working in other services like medical, dental, social service agencies, things like that. So that's kind of like an example of the workforce, right? Of what areas we're working in, right? Also gives you an idea of the industries and the impact that we're making in this state and the country. Although the number that I gave you was North Carolina focused, but I just wanted to share with you some of those stats that you can share with others, right? Of the impact that we make in this state, but also where we are, what are the fastest growing areas, what are the areas with the most density of Hispanics, how many Hispanics are there, what is the breakdown of the 1.1 million, right? All that kind of stuff. And hopefully you can take that information and use it to either connect with the Hispanic community, whatever which way you think it's important, to support, help, register to vote, share values, right? You know, that as you know, as a population, we're conservative as a whole, with a certain percentage not being so much, right? And then you have certain percent that are more liberal on the liberal side. But hopefully that information is valuable to you. You can reach us if you want to connect with us, our organization, and somehow help you kind of decipher some other kind of data. We have a lot more data across the whole state, particular cities and the like. Just wanted to give you this kind of overview. You can call us at 919-931-4597, 919-931-4597, or connect at Hispanos del Sur, the name you see up there on the screen, .com, connect at hispanosdelsur.com, the name you see there on the screen. And hopefully we can help you connect with the Hispanic community and share programs and services, or any other things that we can help you with. Thanks for listening in. We are done with today's show, and we're here every Thursday from 4 to 5 over 106.5 FM La Celestial, on our Facebook channel, as well on the Facebook channel of the radio station. We're on YouTube Live, and this show will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you can reference it later on at some point. We appreciate y'all. Thanks.
Cuando en mi fe se meta el sol, cuando tropiece y piense que no hay solución, Él me guiará con la paciencia de su amor. Él sigue aquí. No me dejará cuando en mi fe se meta el sol, cuando tropiece y piense que no hay solución. Él me guiará con la paciencia de su amor. Él sigue aquí. Aunque a veces dudo y retrocedo, aunque a veces pienso que no puedo, Él sigue aquí.
Gracias por sintonizar Café con Hispanos, la voz de nuestra gente hispana en Carolina del Norte. Si desea contactar a nuestro conductor Gilbert Pagán, llame hoy al 919-931-4597, 919-931-4597. Síganos en nuestras redes sociales como Hispanos del Sur. Puede enviarnos un correo electrónico a connect@hispanosdelsur.com. Hasta pronto. La Celestial 106.5